Good evening and thank you for joining us for a special edition this evening of ABS TV Presents. Of course, this is where we bring you the very latest in current affairs across Antigua, Barbuda. I'm Ursula Charles Jr. You're tuned to the Nation station. We are, of course, the nation's news authority. This evening, we're talking about the census, the population and housing census ongoing across Antigua, Barbuda. And three guests have joined us live in studio for our discussions. Of course, the census is being done under the theme Mapping the Present, Shaping the Future. We're seeing some enumerators there out in the field. Joining us, though, in studios is the Director of the National Bureau of Statistics, Stachel Edwards, to my far right. Joining him as well is Deputy Census Officer Rohan Anthony, and we have the Assistant to the Deputy Census Officer, Deborah Barnes, as well in studio with us. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening. And I think the big question, as we start with Mr. Edwards, the Director, is to just explain for us, for the public, for those who have been under a bushel, so to speak, what is a census and what are we about?
Thank you, and good evening again, and good evening to your audience. Basically, a census is a count of the population and the characteristics of the population. It's a snapshot of the country at a particular moment in time. It provides information in terms of the housing characteristics, demographic information on the population, and also additional information that's used for planning and development purposes. It's the most important statistical exercise that a country can undertake. And for Antigua and Barbuda, this will be the census that most recent census we're doing. Last one we did in 2011.
So my next question would have been, there's been a gap now, say 15 years.
Yes.
How often is it usually done? Is this the norm for there to be a 15-year gap? And why is it that the census is slated for the number of years it is?
So it's usually done every 10 years. Okay. As I just mentioned, 2011 was the last census. And the reason it's done every 10 years is to give you like a snapshot in time intervals to show you how this country would have evolved in terms of the demographic profile and also the characteristics of the country evolve over time. The reason why we are conducting it not in the 10-year slot, of course, in 2020, when we were preparing to do the 2021 population housing census, there was COVID. And because of that and other factors, we postponed and rescheduled it to 2025.
Now, some persons may ask, when you do a survey, usually you do a guesstimate of how many people are in the country. Why don't we generalize? Why is it important that every household, every person is counted?
Because the census, as I said, was a count of everybody. And so it's not a survey in which you take a sample of the population and you make estimates based upon that sample. In fact, for survey purposes, we need a census because the census provides the sample framework or the sample frame in which we can make statistical estimates of the population or sampling of the population using the census. Why is it important? It's important because it provides a snapshot of the country and information that's critical. Housing characteristics, where you need in terms of how the population has evolved, the fertility rate for the population, are we having an aging population, what services are needed for the population. Do we see that there's a shift in terms of people moving or living in different areas? So for different factors, it's important to have that data for decision-making purposes.
All right, we're going to get deeper into the decision-making a little later in the show, but I want to ask you and Mr. Anthony to comment here. And how has it been going so far? I guess that's the big question. Mr. Anthony, you want to comment?
Yes, I'll come in. So far, what did I say? It's been going ups and downs. Yes, we started in September, and we had 200 enumerators in the field in September, and there has been a high attrition rate. Some of them would have dropped out. We went down to 160 or so enumerators from cohort 1, and then we would have trained cohort 2, and just about the time we were supposed to go into the field with cohort 2, we had the snap election, so we delayed. After the election, we had a refreshers training, and then we would have deployed something like another 44 enumerators in the field. The promise is that cohort 2 seems to be better, so we're looking at more enumerators in the field. We're looking at more interviews taking place on a faster basis. We check the server, and we've seen an increase in uptake in the amount of interviews. Still not where we want to be, but it's better than it was when we started.
So the post-election period is better than the pre-election period. All right. And what can we say has been done so far? Do we have any areas, districts I think they call, that have been completed, or are we just getting some out of every district? What would you say?
I'll let Ms. Barnes answer that.
Ms. Barnes, yes.
Yes, we have some persons who did enumeration, they have finished, but it's in different districts.
Okay.
So currently we have about 5 or 6 districts that have been completed, but we still have to check the questionnaires before we can say it's completed, because going up the train, we have our field supervisors, we have our quality assurance supervisors who check the questionnaires. We have our headquarters who does a further check-in. And if there's something that the quality assurance supervisor would have missed, the headquarters picked it up, they would have to go back down to the enumerator for them to do their fixing.
Is that like an unanswered question or answer that doesn't look right?
Unanswered question or a situation that you have a date of birth, but the age is incorrect.
Okay.
So you would have to do your calculations to get it fixed.
Yeah, okay, understood. Just to verify information.
Yes, a
sometimes.
If I might add
verification.
here, any inconsistency, the quality assurance supervisor was authorized by us to reject anything that seems inconsistent. It doesn't have to be wrong, but it look inconsistent, send it back to the enumerator, comment. The software allow you to make comment at every question. So comment at this question saying, look, there's some inconsistency here, please verify, and then the enumerator will verify, make the change if there's should be a change. If it's an unusual situation that is correct, even though it doesn't seem correct, they will explain that, and then the quality assurance supervisor will now be able to accept that interview.
Seems like you have checks and balances at every
Yes.
stage of this process.
Yes.
I want to go to the enumerators now. You and Ms. Barnes both mentioned them and the attrition rate and retraining, etc. Who are these people we have out in the field? The enumerators, how were they recruited? Tell me about any training that was done with them, etc.
Okay, we would have done a recruitment process, and then we would have interviewed these individuals to see if they're tech savvy, if they can read, and all that. After that, now we would have done our process of elimination of suitable persons. They would have gone through a 2-week training of the concepts, the methodology, and then they would have been deployed in different areas. Some persons are working close to home. Some persons requested that they don't work close to home. Some persons, because of the particular area, if we have 6 enumerators and we only need 4, some persons might just go a bit outside of where they live.
And the attrition rate of which we spoke, I don't know who can comment on this. Is it because the lack of responses? Is it because the process was too long? Or does it vary with the different people who have not continued with the process? Those are tough questions, right?
Not at all, not at all.
Not tough, that was the
So the attrition, as Ms. Barnes would have stated, or Ms. Nanton would have stated, we started with 200 enumerators. And just for clarity, a enumeration district is basically a geographical area that we use for census and survey purposes. Okay. So what we do, we subdivide the country into what we call, of course, parishes, and then we further subdivide it into enumeration district. Enumeration district has roughly about 100 to 150 buildings within that particular area. And then after that, we subdivide that area into what we call blocks, just to make it more manageable for survey purposes and for census, for enumeration purposes. Now, there are different factors which have challenged in regards to the attrition or challenges that enumerators face. One is in terms of course, the cooperation of the public. It's often, some persons, they're willing to cooperate, but it's difficult for them to actually to get them at home at a particular point in time. So some enumerators, they go repeatedly to the house and they're having trouble in terms of enumerating, and it can be difficult. The second issue is in terms of, because of the length of the exercise, some people, for different factors, they would have different issues or things that they can't continue the exercise. So they say, look, although I've started, I'm unable to continue because of factors, emergencies or health reasons, different factors. And so we say, okay, we will pause. And then also you have to perform a certain criteria as our outlined by the contract that they're signing. Some people are not, or some enumerators are unable to maintain, and so therefore we have to part ways. Important is that we would have started in 196 of those enumeration districts, whether started, completed, or still in process.
Okay.
Ms. Barnes will give a breakdown how many we're active in currently, and we have additional enumeration districts that we will enumerate, for lack of a better term. That's a lot of enumeration, but that we will conduct data collection activities over the summer and the period after the summer.
Okay. Before we get to the districts, you are, Mr. Anthony, I think I remembered hearing you say that you are or were at the time conducting recruitment for new enumerators. Is that still ongoing, or have you completed that part?
Still ongoing.
Still ongoing. All right. I guess some guys in the studio are interested in that, so we will look into that. Mr. Barnes, let's talk about you and this, let's get to the numbers.
Okay, so currently we have 91 enumerators in the field, and of that, 44 of them would have been cohort 2, which would have gone out not too long ago, sometime late last month. So we are still recruiting. Persons can go to our recruitment site, statistics.gov.ag, and fill out the application form. Persons have to be 18 years and older. We were trying to target our teachers because we know that it's summer, and probably they can assist in some way, shape, or form. We have our tertiary students. We are also looking for them to assist us.
Okay. All right, let's get to the work that they've done so far in the districts. Mr. Edwards mentioned that you have numbers in terms of where we are on the ground and maybe completion.
There's certain areas that we're working. There is no one particular area that
you're in.
It's feasible to have everybody in, so it's spread across according to in Antigua, and we currently or shortly would be enumerating Barbuda.
Okay. Who wants to explain the blitzing process that you're now using? I've been hearing that being bantered about. Ms. Anthony?
Okay, so when we started, as Mr. Edwards explained, enumeration district, a geographical area that is specific to surveys and censuses. We would have one enumerator in that district. The field supervisor would have been responsible for taking them there, showing them their boundaries, and basically go back with them if need be for any issue that arises. That's how we started. That was the regular way that we usually do surveys and censuses. The blitzing now is you would have several enumerators in one enumeration district. If it's 3 blocks, we'll have 3 enumerators in there. If it's 4 blocks, we'll have 4 enumerators. And the field supervisor will be responsible for being there with them at all times. So any issue arises, they will get real-time assistance from the field supervisor. We would also have a chance to make announcements of where we would be, and there will be a presence of a lot of census workers. They will feel more confident being together instead of one person looking at that big enumeration district. And also, we think that the general public will feel more confident seeing so much person at once. So that is what the blitzing is all about.
And in addition to what Mr. Anthony would have said, we can say that the blitz was a success because we had 107 buildings, we got 108, and it was done within a 2 weeks period. So we can say we were successful with that.
She's referring to a pilot that we
The pilot of the
blitzing that we did.
That was the Grace Green area, I think you
Yes.
started at
Yes,
some
to the
point.
west of Green Bay Primary School. Yeah.
Excellent. And we've been seeing snapshots of some of the enumerators. So we can get that back up on the screen because people want to identify them readily. You know, we've had issues in the past with people not knowing who the enumerators are. So is this the shirt they're wearing? Is this the
vest.
The vest?
Yes.
The vest.
And they should also have a census ID
Okay.
along with that. So they are supposed to be showing their census ID.
All right, and they have all the merchandise. They have census bags and so on.
Yes, and in addition to that, they also have a letter from the census office, identifying them. So if persons have concerns of whether or not they're from the census office, they can request to see the letter. If persons are still skeptical, they can call us at 562-7495.
Okay. Let's go to this question now. And I did say all the hard questions will go to the director. Let's talk about what happens during a typical interview. Your communications officer so graciously sent us through some of the questions. We'll get them up on the screen shortly. Take us through some of the kinds of questions that come. Some people have said they don't want anybody in the house. You know, we behave sometimes. You know, they're going to ask us my business and that sort of thing. So I want for the public to get a snapshot as to what is possibly within the list of questions that you will ask.
First, the enumerator will come to the household. They will introduce themselves, identify themselves. They're here part of the population housing census, and they're here to enumerate the household or the building. And then after that, the questionnaire starts with some basic information about the building, right? Basic information about the wall, the type of building it is. After that, if it's a household, if it's a place occupied by persons for living purposes, they'll ask some basic information about the occupants of the household, starting with the head of the household or the reference person. And after they have asked about the head of the household or the reference person, they ask to list the other household members and ask basic demographic information, age and sex. And after that, then they'll ask basic information about the actual housing structure, the house in terms of what are the materials of the walls, materials of the floor, how many rooms, how many bedrooms, the number of appliances and assets and so forth that are in the house, and then information about the household. Then you have the section that is about the person, the individual. We call that the person questionnaire or the individual questionnaire. So after that asks about the house and the housing structure and the characteristics of the house, the building itself, then they'll ask about the individuals in more detail. And you'll ask information regarding to the personal characteristics, information about their religion, education, information if they are 15 years and older, they ask information about their employment. If they're persons that, if it's a female, they'll ask questions about fertility, number of children that they've had. And persons may ask, why are they asking me about how many children I have? Because we want to know information, not that we want to mind your business and have your own, know your personal information for our own purposes, it's because we want to understand the fertility rate. So I mentioned previously about the aging population. Aging population meaning that women are having less children, there's a higher dependency ratio, there's a higher, people are living longer, so therefore there are more services. The government and agencies have to pay more into these schemes, and so then the labor market, there's more burden placed on the labor market in terms of producing for these persons. So if fertility rates are dropping, then this has an impact in terms of policy. So it's not that we're wanting your individual information for just that purpose alone, but we want to know if fertility rates are decreasing, and therefore what's that impact aggregate or overall in terms on the population, the characteristics of the population.
All right, so you talk about the fertility, you mentioned things like appliances, etc. Why I want to know if I have an air fryer, why I want to know if I have a fridge, why I want to know if I have a, you know, why do you want to know what's in my kitchen? They're asking that question.
So the reason why we're asking about the assets is about the quality of life and the characteristics of the household. Again, it's not that we just want to know these things for our own purposes, but we want to know, and remember we said that it's a snapshot. We would have measured this, well, it would have been 2011, we would have measured the same and have similar questions in 2001. We would have measured this in 1991 and previously in the 70s, 60s, and previous censuses. We had censuses in Antigua and Barbuda for years, going back to the previous century. And so then therefore we're providing a snapshot in terms of over time, how does the characteristics of a house change in terms of the quality, the assets that household ownership, and in terms of the actual demographic profile of the country.
Tell us what happens if someone isn't at home. The enumerators in the field, they're doing a blitzing, and they've noticed nobody's at this house. They've gone there repeatedly. What is the course of action?
We usually give them a callback card where they can list their name and number and fit it if it's between the fence or whatever is the case. They can even ask the neighbor what time so-and-so is going to be home. And if that doesn't work, they can check back maybe like 2 days later at a different time to see if the person is back.
I do understand that there must be times when somebody say, come back tomorrow or come back next week, and every time you go back, they're not there, or they say, come back again when you go the next time. Has that been the case? Have you experienced that? And what is the course of action thereafter?
That has been a bit of frustration for enumerators, because going back, you're telling me to come back and you're not there. It's very frustrating. So an enumerator has an opportunity to go back to a household 3 visits. If that is not taken care of, the field supervisor will go back for the 4th visit. And if still no response from the household, the headquarters will go back for the 5th visit. If after the 5th visit and there's still no response, the headquarters will send it to the census office, and we in turn will take care of it.
What do you mean by take care of it?
To find out to find out what is the reason, and get a status update that if the person is refusing, because we take measures for persons who refuse to answer the questions for the census.
It is in law that you have to answer, is that not right?
Yes.
So by law, the Statistics Act, the National Bureau of Statistics Act, and the census order, by law, that gives us the legal mandate and the authority to conduct the census. So not that we're just doing it on our own, we have a legal mandate to conduct the census. And in addition to that, that we are responsible in terms of undertaking this exercise. First, we're sworn to confidentiality. We cannot disseminate any of this information at the individual or the granular level. So I cannot collect information and go to your household, find out some information about you and disperse it, disseminate to anybody, whether it's another government department, whether it's another entity, whether it's to any other government agency or private agency. I can only aggregate that information and release it at an aggregate level. That's meaning basically I can give you an overview, but I can't provide details to any other entity by law. And if we violate that, we are sworn, we are at risk of penalties of up to 2 years in prison or $10,000 and all. Right. And at the same point, the legal mandate and the law provides that households and the public are to respond to this question. So it's nothing new, it's nothing, we have done this previously. This is not peculiar to Antigua and Barbuda, it's done across the world. Other countries do it every 10 years at different time intervals. So it's not unique and peculiar to Antigua and Barbuda. Census and the authority to conduct censuses, if you're a religious person, you can remember in biblical times they did censuses. So it's not something that is new. Yes, the questionnaire has become a little bit more lengthier, and it has, processes have improved, or have, technology is now more integrated into the process. But the process of counting the population for decision-making purposes, not only for policymakers, but for the business community, for development partners, for investors, for the public, for education, is something that has been conducted for years and years across the world.
I think you asked if I remember in biblical times. No, I read about it. I don't actually remember. Just wanted to clarify that, Mr. Edwards. Someone will ask you, I'm very busy, can you not leave a questionnaire, let me fill it out, and then I come back and you pick it up? Is it that, to me, that sounds valid. Does that fit into what you're doing, or is the process now computerized and there's no physical paper trail? How does that work?
Yes, definitely. There are no paper. We would have advanced. The last census was done using paper. This time around, we are using the technology. We have a tablet where the information is gathered and uploaded into a server. And we cannot leave the tablet with anyone. Only the enumerator does the interview. So if they are not available, then the interviewer will have to return at another time to the interview, because they cannot leave the tablet. In other countries like the US, they mail the questionnaire to you, and you are able to do it online and return it. We are not there yet. Probably by the next census, we might be looking at things like that.
Good? Yes.
So the questionnaire has different skip patterns, and so as Debbie would have said before, that over 2-week training, enumerators trained on how to conduct an interview, understand the concepts and the definitions, the census methodology. Now, in the Caribbean and most of the Caribbean countries, our questionnaires are a little bit more developed not developed, but more extensive than in other regions. In some regions, it's very basic questions. The reason why is that they have stronger or more extensive survey programs. So they conduct more regular, more frequent surveys. In the Caribbean, we tend to do less surveys in between censuses, so census questionnaires are often more lengthier. And because of the different skip patterns, validations, concepts and definitions, and the questionnaire in terms of understanding the questionnaire, that's why, as Mr. Anthony said, we don't leave it with the individual. Additionally, Mr. Anthony would have mentioned that we're using tablets. We use what is called CAPI, Computer-Assisted Personal Interviewing. And this is a methodology that has been proven across the world again. This is not something new. We started using this technology in 2018 when we conducted a labor force survey in 2018. So we have practice with using this technology. It's secure, it's safe. As I said before, we don't share with any other department, with any other entity. So for instance, another department can have access to that. Only the census office has access to that information, and not everyone in the census office. So it is important to note that we, by law, cannot share it with other individuals. There's no individual or the entity that can call and say, we want this information in this particular individual. I mean, I need a holiday, but 1735 is not a place I want to rest at. So we had penalty for at risk, not risk. We can be punished by or penalized by 2 years in prison, as I said previously, or fine of up to $10,000. Yes.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our break, our only break, because it's well past 8:30. Time flies when you're having fun on this set, I can assure you. We are sitting with the representatives from the National Bureau of Statistics, and we're talking about the population and housing census ongoing across Antigua and soon to be across Barbuda. We'll be back after these short messages.
Why should we care about the National Housing and Population Census?
Every 10 years, the census collects demographic information on everyone living in Antigua and Barbuda, from babies to senior citizens.
This data helps allocate funding for healthcare, jobs,
and schools.
Every recreational field, every community center is dependent on accurate census data.
We just participated and we feel comfortable that our information is safe and secure.
Together, we're mapping the present, shaping the future.
Estamos mapeando el presente, informando el futuro.
رحنا عم نرسم الحاضر لتشكيل المستقبل.
描绘现在，塑造未来。
We are mapping the present, shaping the future.
If you plan to stay at home during a hurricane, there are things you can do to protect yourself. Monitor local radio and/or television stations for weather reports. Stay indoors until the impact is over. Stay away from glass windows and exterior doors. Evacuate to a neighbor's home or shelter if your home is damaged or if emergency personnel instruct you to do so. This message is brought to you by the Antigua Barbuda Broadcasting Services. For more information on hurricane preparedness, contact the National Office of Disaster Services at 462-4206. Welcome back to ABS TV Presents. Ursula Charles Jr. here with you. We're sitting with the representatives from the National Bureau of Statistics as we're discussing the ongoing population and housing census. We're sitting with the director of the Bureau, that's Tachel Edwards, and by virtue of that position, he's a census officer. We've also got the Deputy Census Officer, Rowan Anthony, and Assistant to the Deputy Census Officer, Deborah Barnes, joining us. All right, before we left, we were talking about the interviews at home, so to speak. And so the big question is, as I have not been enumerated yet, what can I expect in terms of the timeline, the length of the interview when the enumerators come?
Well, it depends on how many persons live in your household. And if it's your loan, it should not take more than a half an hour. The questionnaire is made up, especially with the personal part of it. It depends on if you're working, if you're not working, if you're retired, and if there is somebody in your household that is under 14. If the person is under 14 and is still going to school, the questionnaire cuts off at the education section of the questionnaire.
But if the person is over 14, then the other question
yes,
must
they
be
would,
answered about him or her.
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm not alone, let's suppose it's a family of, average family, 3, 4, then how long do we suspect an interview will last?
It still depends. If the 2 younger ones are going to school, it might take maybe an hour. It depends on the individuals who are answering the questions.
Okay. Is it possible to break during an interview and say, my pot is on the stove, I have to finish cooking for my husband, whatever the situation is that possible?
So long as time is there to finish, if the household want the enumerator to come back, they can facilitate them.
Okay.
But we try to have the questionnaire filled out in one go.
That would be the ideal that you're
Yes.
looking at. Are businesses involved in the census?
Yes, they are. It's a count of all the buildings across Antigua and Barbuda. So even if I noticed that there was a building outside of ABS, it's not there anymore, but it was there when we would have done our mapping exercise. So the enumerator would have to go, press our GPS, and say that this building is no longer there. So no matter, so long as there is a building on the map, they have to enumerate it and identify if it's there, if it's not there, if it's a dwelling, if it's a business. But all the buildings across Antigua and Barbuda must be enumerated.
But the workers in the business aren't enumerated like a second time, ask questions,
No,
etc.
the only thing that we require from the business is how many males and females work at the establishment.
Indeed.
We will ask basic information, of course, about the building characteristics, the type of walls, etc., about the building. So we still collect that information. And then, as Ms. Barnes said, that basic information about whether it's a school, whether it's a business, whether it's a different type of institution, we collect basic information about that building. So remember, census is a count of every building. We do focus on households because that's the largest, the large portion of or component of the country, but every building is enumerated. And you asked the question about in terms of, persons may ask, okay, so why would you want to know that information? You asked the question about assets and building characteristics. During the break, there was the ad about nods, and you're talking about planning purposes. So if you know the characteristics of the buildings, if you know what kind of structures of roofs, if you know what kind of structure of walls, if you're talking about planning for disasters and so forth, you have that information, you have it at an aggregated level, then you can make more decisive decisions in terms of how you're going to plan for the future. If you're going to plan for it in terms of homes or buildings that are in flood-prone areas, how are you going to deal with that? So that's why the census is important. It's not just simply just asking your information for us to know it, but when you aggregate it, the power of it, the more accurate it is at the detail level, the better it is that when you aggregate it, you have a snapshot of the characteristics of the population. And that is the power in terms of the census.
Okay. Now, one of the big pushbacks has been the impression that the census is linked to immigration, and you're trying to determine who's here legally, who's not here legally, etc. Who wants to disavow people of that thought?
Let me take that.
Please.
Because what Mr. Santos basically spoke to that already, that we cannot divulge information to no government entity or to no other entity at all. And every time when we publish information, we publish it at an aggregate level. There is no question in the questionnaire that asks you anything about your immigration status. We are not concerned about your immigration status. We just have to account for everybody who is resident in Antigua and Barbuda at the time of the census. Your immigration status, no other status, is of any importance to us. So any person who avoiding us or thinking of avoiding census because of that, they have no reason whatsoever to, because there's nothing at all about immigration.
So if I,
Status.
Immigration
About the
status.
status.
Yes.
We
Of the
ask persons where they were born, where they come from, and all that. But that is just to track the movement around the Caribbean and whatever. But to say that we want to see a passport to see if you have time, we do not ask that question.
Is that what you wanted to
That's
add
not our
something to that?
business.
yes, so in terms of the legal status, we don't care about that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Whether you're here legally or not, that is not, as Mr. Anthony said, is in terms of once you reside in here in Antigua and Barbuda, the time of the census is being conducted. That's the information in terms of we're trying to collect. Yes, we ask questions in terms of your demographic information, your where you were born, etc., if you migrated, etc., but nothing is being asked about your legal status. We do not care. The bylaw, the enumerator also, they swear an oath of secrecy, and by law, in the same penalties that extend to us extends to them, and they can't divulge that information. So the question in terms of persons are concerned about, and we had this in previous censuses, and other countries have that same concern. People are not have that concern, so we understand the concern. But we are not interested in that type of information and sharing it with any other entity. We're not going to share it with the immigration department. We're not going to share it with the police. And we don't ask that question if you're here legally or not. That is not a question we ask. And so that concern, we can say, and we have never done it in the past. We have conducted numerous censuses. Mr. Anthony has been there for several of those censuses. And we have never in the past, and we will not be divulging that because we don't ask that type of information.
It goes with to ask, though, what about misrepresenting information on the census? For example, you talked about enumerators, some choosing to stay within the place where they live and some choosing to go elsewhere. What if I am an enumerator, I go to Mr. Anthony's house, Mr. Anthony tells me, I am the only person who lives here, but I very well know Mr. Anthony has a woman in his house that lives with him and that sort of thing. Can the enumerator make a note or go back to the census office to say this is questionable, for instance? What happened in that case?
Yeah, yes, that is expected. If you meet a situation that is not, you know it's not, you cannot like approach a person and try to say, look, you're lying to me. But you can, of course, report to the census office that you know that there are more persons living there than has been said, and we can take it from there.
So if I may add to that, the concept of a census is that you take and you do an interview or you conduct an interview as much as possible. The principle of census is not only in Antigua and Barbuda, you take word at face value. You're interviewing the person. Now, you may ask, okay, if somebody is purposely misinforming, then what impact that will have? Yes, there will be cases, or there may be cases where persons may say something that is not 100% accurate, as Mr. Anthony in terms of protocol, but enumerators cannot and should not go to an household and say, as Mr. Anthony just said, oh, that's not the truth, I know the truth, and this is that and the third. No, you, the person, you record that information, but we also teach them how to probe and how to interact with the respondent and say, okay, you sure about that? You know me, but not aggressively, not in a confrontational matter, because you want, and you try to persuade them in terms of the accuracy, the importance of the accuracy of data, the information that they provide. So it's not simply that the person would ask all the questions to try to validate, verify at the spot. That's how they've been trained, and to provide more detailed information, question and verify, and try to persuade the household in terms of providing a more accurate picture.
So you build trust, so to speak, with
Yes, yes.
I like that. Have we been engaging community leaders, for example, in trying to get those in the community to be more responsive to the census? Or do you want to make a call now for them to be more involved to help you get your work done, so to speak?
So let me answer that. In terms of communication advocacy, that's something that we are strengthening. We have done a lot of work in terms of reaching out to the public using traditional media, radio, television. We recognize we need to strengthen our social media campaign. And yes, in terms of community leaders to churches, church leaders, churches, other social groups, we will be coordinating with them and strengthening our collaboration with them to get greater penetration. We have started the process and we will continue doing so, especially when we go to certain communities and they have like community groups or they have neighborhood watches and so forth. We will be coordinated with them in terms of when we're enumerating those enumeration districts, those areas.
Have we gotten assistance from any government ministries, so to speak? Are they assisting, apart from yours, of course, in terms of other government ministries helping you to coordinate and to get better penetration according to you?
So in terms of government agencies, it starts with the questionnaire, because first in the development stage of the questionnaire is that we collaborate with other agencies to see, okay, what are the questions that are beneficial for your ministry, department, entity. So then we start that process even years before we started the enumeration process. In the actual execution of the census, there are other departments or other ministries that we will collaborate with. For instance, in terms of communication advocacy, we're strengthening our relationship with the Ministry of Information so that therefore we could get the message out. In terms of questions regarding education, and Ms. Band spoke about in terms of outreach to teachers and students, we have been collaborating with the Ministry of Education. So yes, we have support from ministries. Of course, there are areas where we will continue and strengthen as we continue the census because of the importance of it. And there are certain aspects of the census where we may need different ministries' assistance and support, depending on where we're at in terms of the life cycle of the census. Now, a census, the count of the persons is just a starting point. The whole process is the collection, the compilation, the processing, the analyzing of the data, and the dissemination of the data. The census is not concluded until we disseminate the data. And so we are in the collection phase, which is the important part, but we will, during the different phases, we'll also be collaborating with other entities in terms of assistance, with the importance that the confidentiality rules still apply in terms of only using or accessing the data in an aggregated format. And also in terms of the census officers will be the ones who will have the only access to the granular data.
And if I might just add, just a simple way of collaboration, because the blitzing that we spoke of, when we blitz, we want to take persons to the area all at once. And so we will be working along with Works through the transport board to get transport to assist with taking. So since it's everybody's business, everybody has to be lend a hand. We're just responsible for execution, but it's everybody's business. So we seek assistance from all and sundry.
All right, talking about collaboration, here we are. All right, on our screens. Let's talk about Barbuda. Somebody mentioned it very briefly, but Barbudans are watching and wondering when are they getting to us, and yeah, so we're eagerly anticipating your arrival. What's the plan for Barbuda?
Let me speak to Barbuda, because Barbuda is my baby. When we started in September, we expected that after we'd have gotten persons settled in Antigua, we would move to Barbuda right away. But so many issues came up that we had to push back Barbuda. We are now working feverishly to get Barbuda in the field, but I'm very confident, like I've always been, when it comes to Barbuda, because not only because it's a small population, but the Barbudan seems to be very much responsive when it comes to these kind of exercise. So I want to encourage them to continue along that line. When we start, make sure that they cooperate with the enumerators that we would have already trained, and it's just a matter of getting the equipment over to them now to do their thing. But big up to Barbuda. They're always supportive. Yeah.
And the enumerators for Barbuda are from Barbuda?
Yes.
And they've already been trained, etc.?
Yes, they would have come over, the head of the team, and the IT person would have come over and trained when we were training, and then they went over and did training. When we were doing the refreshers training, they would have logged on virtually and pick up that. So they're rearing and ready to go.
Okay. So we'll just come back to you in terms of the process, because data collection is happening now. You've listed quite a number of things that have to happen after you've collected the data. How long is that process expected to take, and who will be involved in getting all that done in terms of compiling data, analyzing, and then presenting it in an acceptable form, so to speak?
So it's dependent in terms of course, how fast we complete the data collection phase, which is dependent on the cooperation of the public. And for us, as soon as we are completed, so some of the processing happens during the collection phase, right? There's a process where you call post-processing. After the actual completion of the collection of all the data, you then have what we call post-processing, where you do more detailed processing of the data. But because we're using CAPI, or computer-assisted personal interviewing, and as Mr. Anthony mentioned, some of that data is already saved in secure servers that only persons with the necessary access can access. The validation has started in some of the questionnaires. And as Ms. Barnes would have started, we go through the process in which different persons are responsible for checking. But in terms of the completion, we are not able to say that, okay, by September we're going to be complete, because it's dependent on the cooperation of the public. We do, of course, have plans. We have target dates, and we have estimates in when we should be completed. But it's dependent, and that's why we're here. We're asking the public to cooperate with us, because as soon as we complete this phase, and then in terms of the processing part of it and the initial results, that will come after. Now, the question is, of course, the processing is, the collection is one phase, and then the validation and what I mentioned is the post-processing. Also, the length of time in release of results is dependent on the quality of data that is collected. You mentioned in terms of the accuracy. So if somebody provides misinformation, we have to do our own internal checks and to make sure, okay, when we aggregate this data, is this making sense? Is this reflective of that particular community? And so then if there are inconsistencies, we then have to do further validation and checks, which may add additional time to the processing phase. So it could be 6 months, it could be 3 months, but it depends in terms of the completion of the data collection and the quality of the data that's collected and the level of validation that we have to do. Because at the end of the day, we do not want to release results that are inaccurate. And yes, preliminary results, there are some, you have a little wiggle room, not wiggle room, but there's, you allow for some differences and variances, but you don't want to quote a number, then it's totally incorrect when you do your final checks and validation.
So what I can say also about what Mr. Edder just said is that using CAPI, as Mr. Edder said, the process will be much shorter than the previous census when you use paper, because some validations are built into the questionnaire already, and the questionnaire goes straight to the server instead of having to scan the questionnaires. So the end result will come out much quicker. As we can't say when, but much quicker. Still need the public, but it will be much quicker than it was in 2011 when we used paper.
I've heard Mr. Edwards say at length that a lot of countries post-COVID have had issues with their responses to the census, but certainly we don't want Census 25 to be still going on in 27 and 28, etc. So I want, before we go, for us to leave some messages to people who are still hesitant about their participation and someone who maybe has told an enumerator to go and come back and who still isn't very willing. So, Mr. Edwards, let's start with you and get a word from you and from each of you before we leave here this evening.
Okay, so we want to encourage the public in terms of participating in the census. It's an important exercise, not only for us at the census office, but as we said, for national development. And we're talking about reporting at an aggregate level. We understand that persons have busy schedules, persons have hectic lives, and so we want them to cooperate so that therefore we can provide information, or we can collect that data to provide a more accurate picture of the population so that it can be used for informed decision making, not only by the political directorate, not only by policymakers, but also, as I said before, by the business community, by investors. We want to understand better the labor market, where it is that we need additional resources, where it is that we need additional support and assistance. So where there are opportunities to further business investment. So the census provides some of that information. At the same point in time, we need the collaboration and the support. It's a national exercise. It's the most important statistical exercise, and not just my colleagues here who have been working hard and feverishly over the last several months and several years to prepare and conduct the census, but also in terms of the public in regards to, you're talking about your impact or your input is critical for a successful census. I'm not sure if we're wrapping up, if this is the final, but I must say thank you to the field staff. They've been working hard. Those persons who have been there, they've been dealing with the challenges, and they're working and continue to work on the situations that can be difficult and challenging. Also want to again thank my census team. Mr. Anthony and Ms. Barnes are just two of the representatives. There are other persons behind us who have been working feverishly. So I must say very much heavy thanks to them also, and also to the public who have cooperated, who have participated, who have taken time of their busy schedule to participate in the census and this important exercise in mapping the present and shaping the future.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes, as Mr. Edwards said, I also would like to thank our field staff, the persons at the National Bureau of Statistics, because we usually get input from them. I would like to thank our slogan winner. He is now, I believe, 11 or 12. He has passed to go to the Antigua Grammar School, Asahi Joseph, for our slogan, Mapping the Present, Shaping the Future, and to let the public know that the information covers everything. We are supposed to report 2030 for the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know that is a big challenge. We need the information in order to do our reporting. I would like to thank those households, businesses who have participated already, and look forward to our other establishments and households to give us their support.
And Mr. Anthony?
Okay, yes. Well, to piggyback on what Ms. Barnes just said, a lot of the SDGs indicators come from information from the census. And I know the general public wants Antigua to report to the SDGs. We want to look good as a nation. And so please work along with us, provide the information when the enumerator comes to you. It is very important that you do that so that we can report to the SDGs. We can report regionally to CARICOM and all these. Even when you, the government goes out to seek assistance of any kind, people don't give assistance like before, just like that. Exactly. They need the census information to know exactly what you're talking about. So the country development is hinged on data, and census has the most data that you can get. So please work along with us. As you said, we are mapping the present and shaping the future. So when you're working along with us, you're also assisting in mapping the present and shaping the future.
Indeed, and even if just on a surface level, I'm very tired of hearing we have about 100,000 people living here. I want a number. I know it's not exactly 100,000. So even that's the only thing that comes out of it. I need to know how many people live in this country. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank
I know
you.
this is a one-off, but we have a series of engagements planned with the National Bureau of Statistics so that we can continue to sensitize the public on the importance of the responses that they give, and of course, how they can work with your office to ensure that we get those responses in as quick a time as possible, because we don't want, as we said, this to be going on till for the next 2 years.
Yes.
So, Mr. Satchel Edwards is the Director of the National Bureau of Statistics. He was, he's my guest on my very far right. Deborah Barnes is the Assistant to the Deputy Census Officer, sitting in the middle of the two gentlemen. And, of course, we had Mr. Rowan Anthony, who is Barbuta's father, apparently. He says Barbuta is his baby. He's the Deputy Census Officer. They all join us this evening to discuss the very latest. I'm Russell Charles Jr. It's been a pleasure to be with you this evening. Continue to engage with the enumerators. Continue to give those responses. We need your responses we need the data collected for the population and housing census. And we thank you so much for having joined us for this discussion this evening. Until next time, take care.
Every classroom, every book, every teacher, it all starts with numbers. The census helps us understand how many students we need to prepare for, where new schools should be built, and what resources we need. Education is the foundation of our future, and accurate data helps us to build stronger. So participate in the 2025 Population and Housing Census, because every student deserves
a good education.
Mapping the present, shaping the future.
My name is Twinai Payne. I want to highlight the importance of the population and housing census for farmers. Our participation is essential to secure the resources and support needed for agriculture growth and food security. By uniting our voices, we can ensure that agriculture receives the attention it deserves. Let's make our voices count and strengthen our industry by mapping the present and shaping the future.
Why should we care about the National Housing and Population Census?
Every 10 years, the census collects demographic information on everyone living in Antigua and Barbuda, from babies to senior citizens.
This data helps allocate funding for healthcare, jobs,
and schools.
Every recreational field, every community centre is dependent on accurate census data.
We just participated and we feel comfortable that our information is safe and secure.
Together, we're mapping the present, shaping the future.
Estamos mapeando el presente y formando el futuro.
رحنا عم نرسم الحاضر لتشكيل المستقبل.
描绘现在，塑造未来。
We are mapping the present, shaping the future.